Welcome back to Racket Stringing Tips. Today, I'm actually going to be starting a series about stringing and specifically about professional racket stringing. So, to kind of get build the framework, I wanted to go over what a professional racket stringer is. And so, I'll be going through a presentation, and on each of those slides, I'll go ahead and expound on that as well. And please, if you have a comment or a question, leave that. On the channel and I will get back to you. So, all right, let's get into it. So, as far as a definition of what a professional racket stringer, it's really an individual who's skilled and trained in the art of stringing rackets for sports, primarily tennis, badminton, racquetball, and squash. This profession involves using specialized tools and techniques to ensure that the racket strings are properly tensioned and installed, maximizing the performance and longevity of the racket. And I do want to also add that when I think of a professional racket stringer, I know a lot of times we think of stringers who work on the professional tour, which is part of being a professional racket stringer, but it's not the only thing. Really, if you're getting paid to string rackets, you're a professional racket stringer. So think about it in that context, because it is a profession. All right. So, first off, what are some of the responsibilities of a racket stringer? I mean, I know essentially it's stringing rackets, right? But it's also like installing the strings precisely, weaving, tensioning, and making that according to the player's specs or standards for all of the sports that we mentioned previously. Choosing the correct strings, advising the players on the best type of strings based on their playing style, preference, and the level of play. Tension adjustments, setting the correct string tension to match the player's requirement, which affects the racket performance. So, the more that you know about these individual sports, the better you kind of know the different tension ranges because it's going to be different for badminton, racquetball, and tennis. I primarily am a tennis player, so most of the stringing information I have is in that context. However, I have played racquetball, badminton, and I've never played squash, but I know it's all a little bit different. And so, learning that and understanding that will help you better to, reach out to those customers as well, because you can, cross over into all these different areas as far as in your business later on as well. Next up, getting racket customization. That's also part of a responsibility, right? So the primary functions here are grip replacement, changing grips and adding over grips to ensure comfort and control, the weight and balance adjustment, modifying the racket's weight and balance to suit the player's needs, whether that's adding some weight at the head or just overall making it heavier, just kind of changing the swing weight of the racket. And handle shaping, that's a kind of more of an advanced thing that later on many the stringers will do for when they're stringing for professionals on tour. They will get into handle shaping. They'll get the rackets from the manufacturer. They'll shape it based off of what has been determined that the player really wants as far as something different on the handle and so forth. And that is something that you can learn as well. So it's a little bit beyond the scope of this presentation today, but I will be going into all these different areas if you stick with me. I do want to break all this down eventually so that it makes more sense to you. All right, next up. Thirdly, maintenance and repair, another responsibility, right? The grommet repair, repairing damaged grommets and protecting the strings of the frame, whether that's replacing the whole strip or just taking the grommets out individually. Frame inspection, checking for cracks or damages in the racket frame and advising on repairs or replacement. That's going to be critical for you to understand that and looking for that because you want to obviously keep your customers' equipment up, to optimized. String repair, fixing or replacing broken strings. Okay, primarily this is going to be restringing the racket. I mean, I know that I've seen rackets that have 6 or 8 knots on them. People have tried to repair string by just replacing one or two, and honestly, that doesn't really work. I mean, I know if you're really cheap, you can try to do that, but ultimately, the string pad or the string bed is not gonna you're not going to be able to bring it back to where it needs to be. So really, it's all about replacing the strings and restringing the racket. Okay, next up, skills and qualifications. Okay, number one, first off, you need, what kind of technical skills? Well, Precision and attention to the details, ensuring that each string is correctly tensioned and positioned. So basically knowing, what tension you're putting in the machine and making sure that the stringing machine provides that, and also being able to figure out how to measure that. And then also positioning would be really straightening those strings after you're stringing the racket. So when you're handing that racket back, the strings are not all crooked and so forth, because that also later on will shorten the life or the playability of the strings itself. Manual dexterity, this is kind of what you need: handling strings, stringing tools and machines effectively, efficiently, being able to weave the strings. That's something that you do have to learn. So you have to be able to do that. Knowledge of the materials, this is pretty big. Understanding different string types and their properties, understanding the difference between the gauges, with the difference between a 15 light and a 18 gauge or even 19 gauge string, which is thicker, which is thinner, right? A 15 gauge, of course, is thicker, and 18, 19 is a thinner string. When would you want to use those? When do you use one for more top spin? When do you want to use one for more control? um, which one's better for durability, which one's better for performance, and what type of properties. Do you want to use natural gut string versus the synthetics or the poly based strings, and all those kind of things. So that's all stuff that once you get into stringing, that you get a better understanding of, and that's going to be critical. It's a little bit beyond the scope of this first video, but skills and qualifications, again, the knowledge, right? That's understanding racket sports, the familiarity with tennis, badminton, squash, racquetball, and whatever the players of those needs of the individual sports, like I kind of mentioned a little bit of that earlier as well. Stringing techniques, mastering the various types of stringing techniques, understanding starting knots, understanding tie off knots, where to put those knots, stringing patterns, top to bottom, using two-piece string techniques, and some of the other more specific ones as well, adjusting tensions differently for mains and crosses and so forth. So that's all stuff that is part of the stringing techniques that you need to learn. Next thing, equipment proficiency. Competency in using stringing machines and related tools, understanding what all the different tools are, the awls and the starting clamps, and understanding the difference between the different types of stringing machines, whether we're working on the drop weight machines or a lockout system, or a constant pull electronic machine. What's the difference? When would you want to use those? Is there a difference in how it ultimately creates the, the string performance and so forth? All right, next up is, of course, customer service, communication, effectively communicating with your clients to understand their needs and providing advice. This is where, like, a lot of stringers, of course, are tennis players or squash players, or so, you're going to be able to kind of talk to your clients as a fellow player as well, and that always helps. Being reliable, providing consistent high quality stringing service, and then you build that trust and repeat business and so forth. Okay, next up, certification. There's really primarily two certifications. In the United States, it's the USRSA Racket Stringers Association, and that's where I have an MRT certification. I've also taken some courses and joined the European Racket Stringers Association, the ERSA, and really this one for people who want to string for professionals or be stringing in professional tournaments. I would recommend joining this one. And some in a video, a future video, I will be breaking those down as well, because there is a lot of really good information, important information that you can learn and get from those associations. They do have a purpose and so forth. Um, Training programs. So aside from being certified, how do you get trained? Well, there are workshops. Some of the associations do have workshops and courses that you can take, and there's also yearly uh, like certifications and trainings and so forth, or online trainings and resources like YouTube. There's lots of great tutorials, and I'll break that down too. There's many people that I follow and that I know that offer really good teaching tutorials. and that's going to help you stay on top of the industry and channels like this as well. So all right. So, what kind of opportunities are there once you do know how to string and you want to string professionally? You want to make money stringing. Number one, of course, where a lot of people go is pro shops and sports stores working in retail environments offering stringing service. So, that could be your specialized tennis shop in your local area, or it could be some of the larger stores, which also include online, like Tennis Warehouse, Tennis Express, those kind of they do hire from time to time. You can actually find that they do. You go to their websites and they're looking for stringers. So if you live in that geographic area or willing to move there, that would be a good place to start. Tennis and badminton clubs. So that is also a good place to go. You can maybe work there. You work at the front desk and then also string rackets, or you might be hired specifically to string or coach. So those things go together many times. Tournament and events, and so this is kind of that higher level where whether it could even be local events at your clubs or other clubs in your area. It could be college events. It could be professional tournaments at the different tiers. Um, and I've strung at basically all of those levels. I started at local clubs, and then I would contract with different clubs, and then I would string for college players in my local colleges were in my area, and then of course I would go to professional events, and then ultimately U.S. Open, the Australian Open, and so forth. So that's kind of a progression that many do follow. And as far as career opportunities, what other types of business opportunities are there for stringers? The freelance stringing, so that's being independent. Either you can work from your home and or offer a mobile stringing service. I've seen this before too. You get some kind of vehicle where you can actually put the stringing machine in, and so you could basically be on site everywhere and just kind of go around and so forth and string rackets. And of course, nowadays, online services. There's a lot of online opportunities to string rackets and/or provide information on that. People will send you a racket, you send it back to them after you string it. People will do that, and all the large companies like Tennis Warehouse and Tennis Express and Dick's Sporting Goods. I'm not sure if Dick's Sporting Goods does it, but there are a lot that will um, you can actually send your racket and they'll string it. Especially if you live in a geographic area that doesn't have a sports store or tennis store, that's really the only way that you're going to get your racket strung. Uh, Benefits of being a professional racket stringer. Well, there's a lot of benefits. If you're a tennis player and you just want to get more into tennis, that's kind of that's how I got started in it. Job satisfaction. Helping other players improve their game and maintain their equipment, flexibility, the ability to work independently or in just being in the sports environment, industry connections, being able to connect with players, coaches, and just being around tennis. For some of us, that's kind of enough in some regard, right? Um, Professional development, staying updated on everything, continually learn, keep on top of new techniques, materials, and equipment. Racket manufacturers continually upgrade and do new things, and new stringing machines come out. I mean, for the most part, you know, there's not a whole lot of new technology as far as stringing machine. It's all pretty much the same with new bells and whistles, of course. But as far as new strings are constantly coming out, you need to kind of keep on top of that because if customers are asking you about specific strings and you've never heard of them, then that's not really going to be helpful to them. Networking, join some associations, and go to the conventions and sporting events and so forth, so that you can kind of get connected because there's usually vendors at all those events and so forth. Expanding your service. Where else can you go beyond that? Advanced customization, offering high-end customized services like professional racket specs, and many times, once you start getting to know some of the players, whether it's college and beyond, and you're working kind of just to have their equipment always up to date, and that way they don't have to worry about it. Coaching and clinics, providing educational sessions for players and other stringers. Start a YouTube channel, those kind of things, so you can, offer. Uh, then, like, maybe go to your local sporting store that maybe doesn't have a racket stringing, or they do, but you can offer like services, and it brings in customers who want to know more about stringing, and so you kind of provide. Um, I've done that before. So you provide a session about just talking about strings and so forth. All right. So, really, in summary, a professional racket stringer combines technical expertise, knowledge of their sports, and great customer service skills to provide the essential services that enhance the performance and durability of rackets. Continuous learning and certification help maintain high standards and adapt to the evolving needs of players. So, this is kind of the conclusion of our first session. So, I just wanted basically to give an overview. So, thanks for watching. Check out my channel. I'm back. I'm going to be making a lot more videos, and specifically a series about racket stringing and so forth, and professional racket stringing. All right, thanks. Have a nice day. We'll see you soon.